Right, hell yeah. So this might be a long format video and we might be just looking at this picture, but we came up with some pretty cool ideas for how to do R1 design and how I can maybe actually, you know, make a prototype and just even modify this boat. So what I want to mention, and I should first mention that this is where I have the foam underneath my thwarts. And that's going to be pretty much just like right around this part. Like these two D-rings are probably where the thwarts are. Actually identical to where this is the center of the thwart. Um, hell yeah, because if I have a strap going all the way around, this is going to be the center. So I have a piece of foam like right in there. I think you can see that maybe bulged out. And then over here. My boat, I didn't think it had very much rocker in the floor, but it does. Like it's got noticeable, it's got a little bit noticeable rocker, so I'll give it credit for that. What happens is that if I don't have those foam, I would say that this floor is fairly neutral with the side tubes. I've even measured it, made a whole video on that. But what happens is out here, it's much lower, and lower meaning it sticks under the boat farther. And so it provides a point where the boat can rock back and forth, either contacting here in this outer tube or vice versa on the other side. And they're, I don't know if it's just the angle of the photo. My boat does feel different, whether I choose this to be the front or this to be the front. So keep that in mind. Now, what I want to experiment with is um, like to chop this, to stair step this down in the back of the boat. And you know what I mean? Like, look at this. Like right here, here's the taper right there, and it's also kind of diamond shaped. But that taper digs through the water, and so there's no difference in it digging through the water. All right, hell yeah. There's no difference than this same shape being right here. And so what I would want is that just in the normal sitting position, even if I'm leaned out on the outer tubes like sideways, the boat is going to have the same contact. But then what I want is if I lean back a little bit, then it's going to tip on that stair step, and then it's going to engage this part of the boat. And so this is where I think, like the boat that I want is a dual design. I want like the I should slow it down, but the video that I made last night where we put these foam chunks in, the boat is super releasey. It rotates fast. It it's a planing hole just because it's rockered, but also it wants to rock all the way from edge to edge. That could make it tippier. And so I'm going to throw in the fact that I would want a sponson for a final design. Like once you do choose an edge, then you have another stair step right here. So having inflated tubes that are stair stepped right here. And then the other thing is that, look at this, this is a rounded edge. I mean, this is a rounded tube. So the contact point, like the main contact point, even if it's sitting in water to a certain depth, is the main contact point's right there, which you can adjust. So in my vision, you can make the boat out of whatever shape you want it to be. Let's say it's just hard rolled and molded plastic, just like a whitewater kayak. You get to choose the shape. So having a square shape, one, that would bring the edge. Well, no kayak has this full rounded chine. You bring it out to wherever you need it, and then you start to taper it up. And even when you taper it up, you're going the opposite direction of this rounded tube. You're taking it all the way out to its full width, and then you're tapering it up this way, where the widest part of your boat is, can be kind of near, basically the top. So like right around this line and not centered. And as this right here, a whitewater kayak's probably the widest part is pretty much close to the center. Uh, but but definitely what I found is having a square chine. So even just a rounded I have a small rounded tube from my inflatable kayak that I strapped right here. And when that goes in, it's almost like a rounded, it's almost like a, I should say, square corner. That's what we're talking about, square stair steps. When that square goes into the water, it has a lot more stability than a rounded corner. And so, yeah, having something sharp and square and railed enter the water that seemed to be real good. And it wouldn't have to be the full length. You could have it just up against the side tube. I think that might play well because in the back of the boat, up against the side tube. What I want is when I go for sure high siding a hole that's going to for sure flip the boat. I want to be able to jam into that sideways and have that sponson, add stability so I'm not downstream flipping, but I can just really lay into that. And, and yeah, so hell yeah. And I want the floor to be raised because in what I have found that if you can't high side where you free the other side of your boat, that's just going to grip and it's going to suck, pearl, and flip instantly. And then you can kind of, in my videos on Kelly's Wave, you could see that kind of just spraying water as it's catching. And then 2 seconds later, it's just a dynamic flip. Where if you can change that contact point so it's just never sucking in that tube, and that's where a very rounded profile I think is the way to go. But I think you want a rounded profile, uh, from last night's footage, but then also have a secondary sponson stability, somewhere. And and again, that doesn't have to be. It doesn't have to. If I add this tube right here, it's kind of a chore to paddle over. But like I said, you don't really have to, you can already make the boat out that far, square it out. That gives you extra stability. And even having a square corner and not a round corner could really help. What I have noticed is that when you have a round corner, the second that starts to lift the weighted part of the boat up, you're flipping. It'll just roll like a circle. So the second you actually get enough torque or leverage to start lifting and rotating the boat, you're flipping. And there's no other, and that's just that. But even with the squared edge, what I found is the second you overtop that, the second that squared edge starts to tip. And that's kind of physics where you have a block sliding up against, or just even a block on a grippy surface. When you push a square block, will it meet its point of impending tip? It's when it releases from the other side, where all points of contact point are now the hinge, and you have a force that's causing torque, and now you have motion and nothing to resist. All right, so hell yeah. So yeah, this video is long as, but I do want that stair step right here, and I also want to redesign the front and the back. The back could be different than the front. You know what I mean? I definitely see the benefit to doing an asymmetric design first. From my standpoint, is anything asymmetric, R1 rafting is asymmetric, is that you find that sometimes when you do things backwards, I don't know, like case in point, I have a bent Carlisle paddle, and sometimes I like to run it, on the concave side. Sometimes I like to run on the convex. Both seem equally useful. It's just kind of whatever I feel like I want to do. So that's what happens when you have asymmetric design. Um, okay, I yeah, but we can talk about it both ways because I'm going to talk like it's symmetric, and I'm going to do the same thing to both sides. I think that's the easiest thing to do. So I want the stair step right here, neutral position or chill, side to side edging. If I lean back on the thwart, then I engage, kind of a steeper angle. Uh, I don't want a point. I think the point, and then this is where I've just mentioned in other posts that I want to stay positive. And so I think the easiest and cleanest thing is I'm going to say my round boat, and most round boats are shaped like my boat, and see how I'm not picking on any of the other manufacturers that also, you know what I mean? And this is getting close though. This is getting close. But because it's kind of obvious. Yeah, see, exactly. So going forward, this might be the only video where I'm just like, hey, don't do that, where you're just like mysteriously just talking about someone's boat. Um, but no, like all the round boats that are R1ing currently have a fairly pointy nose. And So let's just get to it. The pointy nose of any round boat is not useful. Like the one thing that I pointed out is it's too tall. Look at this. Even it's 12 inches at most. Even if you have a tapered boat, this is 12 plus inches. You have that. It's plugging a wave. So you do have that. If this was tapered down to much like a cat tube, even a paddle cat tube or just a cat tube in general, that's hella better. I've been reviewing my footage of taking the RMR paddle cat on the surf waves out east, and definitely having this come to a point and have a larger rocker profile to this, because even this is fairly decent rocker. But even if it comes to a point, it can be even better. This can be cut down from, this can be your highest point. Let's say the highest point's right here, and then you can just chisel all that away. Okay, the other thing that I found, and I'll just speak to my boat. Um, yeah, two things. What was the two things? Ooh, I'm gonna miss something, but I missed something. But anyway, what I find with my boat is um, well, no. One is getting hit sideways. If a wave hits this sideways, yeah, it's gonna turn the boat. Like that's all diamond shape and round boats. And so having 2 points of contact will yeah, so there is two things. So that's one, having 2 points of contact, and we'll get to the 2 points of contact. The other is going up against a hole where, let's say I do plug up, or let's say I do ride into a hole and jump to the front of the boat. This front of the boat, even with this stair step and this is all rounded, it's like jumping onto a basketball and expecting to balance on that basketball. Um, that's what that's what it feels like. So even from my hole surfing footage where I'm trying to figure out how to run big holes, this now this is just the underside almost. Just the underside of this boat being a rounded basketball like surface is awful. Now, you really do want the rounded basketball like surface underneath your cockpit and exactly in the square of your cockpit to where you can utilize all your edges and make transitions faster. The second, and this is cool, what you'll see from that last night's footage in the dark is that when you jump from one side of the boat to the boat quickly moves underneath you, like it slides underneath you. That same thing happens in a paddle cat, but just hardly, because now you're just pushing up against the water, and let's say it doesn't happen in a paddle cat. So you can use that to your advantage when you're like, hey, my body is up against an eddy line, and I can jump to the other side, and now my boat crossed the eddy line even. You know what I mean? Because you have that, it's like the physics problem with a person in a canoe, and then they're like running back and forth in the canoe, the center of mass doesn't change. Okay, so that's two different things right there that can be improved just by making this front end or back end, let's say it's the front end, a cat tube design. So you have two tubes. So this, instead of going up, and then, yeah, so this would just continue straight, and there's no reason that you're going to get so much stability by this not curving in back to a point towards the middle. You know what I mean? So if this just runs straight and then tapers, you can taper it a little bit. I don't think you need an aggressive, and I don't even think you want this aggressive, diamond shaped angle. You just want this tube to come straight, have a high rocker design, and then still have this inflated floor come to about there. Now what you can do is run, and I still want a full boxed in boat where the fabric goes up to the tips. I think all paddle cats should just have fabric up to the tips. I'll try to even do that on my paddle cat because just gluing in fabric sucks because it's not permanent. Yeah, home. I don't know. Just home jobs. It's very difficult to get permanent. Yeah, it's a tricky process. It always is. If you're not, I think if you're not applying pressure, 100. I don't know. Yeah, it's a difficult process. Anyway, but I do want fabric all the way up to the tips, and then that fabric's just ready to go. It can hit water. It's saggy. It doesn't really. I mean, it's taut, but it can lap up against water. And I even think having that be loose and not air inflated and not rigid will actually help from cupping the water because I was just watching Dane Jackson's Antic 3 video. I need to get some water. He was mentioning that the double railed sides actually release if they're touching water on a surf wave, they're more releasable. Like even this channel right here is releasing water. So, I mean, even in this design, if I got rid of this channel, there's a chance that the boat um, might not be as fast, just paddling downriver. Even though, like when I'm on edge, this portion of the floor is engaged, and let's say this outer tube is engaged, having this ribbon here can allow water to move. It's like structure on a ski. And this is a total assumption, but I bet you that is faster than not. And I'm not even going to mention manufacturers, but obviously you can do your own research of what manufacturers don't use I-beam floors and don't use yeah. So anyway, and what are more and where this gap isn't as big. But then also you have a lot of boats where the floor isn't even close to being the lowest portion of the boat. And again, I'm going to be hesitant to mention those manufacturers. You can look for them yourself. But a lot of that style is its own thing. Just because you don't have a cockpit that is like a loose, like mine, like a basketball, you know what I mean? Maybe you don't want that. You have a paddle cat. You have two. You have two. And I gotta stop using the word railed as a negative. That's my whole idea. Is just like use positive terms because having a boat that has 2 points of stability, 2 paddle cat points of stability, is going to be highly stable. Because you're always contacting both points. Even when you're over here on this tube, you have a decent amount of contact over here. When I'm over on this tube, my contact gets reduced to this tube and maybe this I-beam right there, and that's it. Okay, hell yeah. So yeah, so there we go. And so I want this to taper. Now let's talk about how I wanted this to taper, have the stair step. But let's say I did do, and damn it, I need more water. All right, let's say I think the stern you want to play. I think everything I said about having cat tubes is for the front of the boat. You want to be able to stab a wave and have those 2 cat tubes employ. I think that's going to be the best. And so, yep. I did notice in my surf footage of surfing one of the big waves at the North Carolina Whitewater Center is that if you have a paddle cat going down the wave and then it's hitting incoming water, that incoming water is shearing off the paddle cat. The front of the paddle cat being paddle cat it's just shearing off. It's really good. Now the back of the paddle cat, yeah, so that's the same. If this was the front, it would be the front anyway in that. And then, if you did do a 180, your dynamics change, but that first surf is going to be, you can kick yourself out. And I think, and this will be useful, is because let's say you didn't have cat tubes. Let's say I just want to modify this and I do put the stair step in. What happens now going down that surf? If I go down that surf and lean back, and then I'm riding down that big pillow, if there's a stair step here and I'm leaning back, now this is engaged. The whole boat is tipped back now onto this surface. And even though the boat's upside down, it's kind of hard to imagine, but the front of the boat's lifted. And so that's where R1 design, you should just, with your body weight, just shifting back 4 inches, should be able to lift the entire front of the boat. I mean, it just makes sense. You weigh over 150 pounds. Most R1 Raptors weigh over 150 pounds. And so just you moving your weight 6 inches to 8 inches to maybe even a foot slide back. And for sure, this design requires might as well make a full deck where you can just slide back onto, the perfect foamed out whatever you want back there, you know. But hell yeah. So yeah, and that could be very useful for surfing, especially surfing. We have long boats. I don't think the 10-foot boat's too long. I think the 10-foot boat is what I would want to run down any big water river. I really, I was thinking I want a smaller boat, but no, and all around. That's why this 10-foot boat is so fascinating to get more performance out of it. Sure, you could make a six. I mean, you could make a 7-foot boat. You could make a 7-foot R1 boat that's ready for play, and maybe even 6.5, 6 feet. If you were just super stubby, and but hell yeah. So what can we do back here? If we can put our weight back onto the stern, I still, for sure, you still don't want 2 points of contact. Even if you have if the boat does look, if it's got two cat tubes up front, but the back, what do you want? You still have two independent tubes coming back. And so I would still want those to be two, yes, I think you still want to run two cat tubes, not have them come to a point. I mean, basically just kind of butt together. I think you do want them fairly tapered into a diamond. The other thing that you could do is, what would you want? Well, this diamond shape is actually pretty decent. Yeah, what would you do? I don't know how much stability you need, but I know this point, make it a little bit wider. So let's say this is how much stability you needed for the current design. Just open up this point wider, narrower, kind of two cat tubes design. So it's almost the same as the front, but stubbier. I think the stubbier you can make this, and when you lean back, get the boat to go up onto a high edge angle, and even be able to slice this through the water, that's where R1 needs to go. You need to have this to be a low volume. You need to have it an inflated surface so it can provide buoyancy, but more like, I mean, just like the half slice. And I'm probably saying all those terms wrong, but a sliceable rear end. And for an R1 boat, it's got to be short. You can't have a long, slicey end. And also, you want it to be widthwise, almost like a playboat. So you want a slicey rear end that's also wider than even it is now. And so when you go onto that, you're putting a low volume thing into the water. And then the other thing is the second you actually put something low volume and then you jam it in the water, you do get stability. I mean, you're loading up physics, you're loading up forces, and that force has a rebound force. And so you can always use those to your benefit by loading up that surface and letting it release. All right, hell yeah. But still, like I said, get rid of the basketball type center point of this. Always have 2 points of contact. And I'm gonna try never I don't know. Going forward, it's just useful not to tell you the other boat manufacturers, but I will, you can figure it out yourself. But when this floor, I will just say that you have tubes that are independent of this floor. And so if this floor is set back, if this floor is shorter, like cut right here to right here, and then you have actually a void between the tubes and this floor, maybe a fabric void that's pulled up, maybe that pocket's useful for the same water. It's not going to attack water. It's not going to be sticky. Kind of whatever you call that, water shedding. But what that does on certain boats, the ones that I'm thinking about, I'm just trying not to be super obvious, but we'll see, is that you do get a cat tube like front end anyway. So even if it does come to a point or a diamond shape, having two independent tubes be the main points of contact in the water, that's going to get rid of that basketball-esque. See this point right there is a pivot point. And so boats that have a lowered floor are more railed, and then have this inflated floor end shorter, and then have a pocket that allows the front end to be, and like I've never paddled a boat like that. It's just all speculation, but it's the physics makes sense. You have 2 points of contact ramming into whatever wave. But hell yeah! But the things that got to change, this 12 to 8 inches, 18 inches of front end that can plug. This angle, for the front end, it should just be two cat tubes. It should be straight. There's no reason that you should hit something sideways and have it make the boat turn so aggressively. But also, they need to come to a point because cat tubes, even if they get hit sideways, they're going to kind of release anyway. So there's a give and take because cat tubes that are totally straight all the way across, um, again, no manufacturers named. They once those grip, they're going to turn the entire boat. But I think with two cat tubes coming up that are highly tapered and the lowest volume possible, all you're looking for is the bottom, and that's where you can, I figure you could make something out of hard material. Probably not. It'd be too heavy, maybe. All right. Now I think I'm just rambling, but is there anything else that I just think having a stair step and working on dropping back and getting your bow up, because even at the surf wave at low water, I'm trying my hardest to get in the very, very back of the boat. There's no sitting position back there. It's just a hole. And I have no stair step. I want the stair step again to be like right here, get a foot of this, off. And then so I was thinking, well, could I attach D-rings on the, on the floor? So I'm going to say on the underside of what you're seeing right here, and then try to strap it. So I'm already trying to push the floor out here, but could I actually strap the floor up and then make that stair step? I don't think so. I think if I'm going to work on that stair step, my idea is to take a 2-inch chunk of construction foam and just put the foam to right here, all along here. And then strap it in as best as possible, and then just go to the lake and see where I want that 2 inches, and if a 2-inch stair step is enough. Because if I stair stepped it right here, then I would be, then I would have a double stair step. It would be here, here, and there, and I think that is useful because that's like the double. See if I had that construction foam right here, I would have two stair steps before intercepting this surface, this surface, this surface, and that surface. And hell yeah. So that could be a decent design. All right, but yeah, that was my thoughts. And then who the hell knows what you want to do with the sponsons? But I think it can be very useful, very worthwhile to see where the water line actually hits and start applying foam very close to this water line. Like just wherever if I'm sitting on one edge of the boat, let's say the water line comes right to this black, it probably doesn't, it probably comes higher, but let's say it comes from there to there, those two contact points. Then I want to for sure glue foam. Well, and I don't need to glue foam. So this is the cool thing and I think this is a way for any R1er to modify their raft and see if they want to practice modifying the raft. I think this should work out pretty well. It'll be heavy. It could be up to 50 pounds, but making a wooden cockpit, and the whole idea would be to make a wooden box the size of your cockpit where you can flush out the foam. And so what you're going to do is you're going to get rid of the thwarts. And so you're going to make a wooden, or I guess I'm going to make a wooden box, and then I'm going to foam out that wooden box. So I have places to wedge my feet all the way around that have indentation that's maybe 4 inches deep. That wooden box is going to come up to the surface of the raft. I'm going to have a wood all along the outer tubes, all along where the thwarts would be, and even farther back. Maybe even this could be separate, but I also need to close up the front of my boat with fabric or something like that, just so it doesn't take in water for surfing. Front and back shouldn't take in water. It's kind of ridiculous that they do in an R1 boat. And but hell yeah. And then I can foam out the top. I can foam out, a railed side. That wood can come all the way out to the outer surface. So like right here is the point of the boat that sticks out the most. So the wood on top can come out to that distance and then even have a foamed ridge rail. And I think it would be higher, but having a chunk of foam, up, I've talked about how you can push up against your hip, so you could totally carve that out and get that exactly where you wanted. Along the midpoint of the boat, you can make it more railed, so you actually have something to grip. And then hopefully, it's not too high where you go to pull down on the boat. It doesn't just flip itself over, but it actually gives you a rail to pull yourself on. But then also, um, well, yeah, and then but even from there, let's say I wanted to make my boat just slightly wider. Then I can take uh yeah, I mean then I can even drop wood straight down and then foam out. I can make foam attachments or just even from that wooden rail start to foam out this. Having this to be a squared edge or like we said or I said an edge that, yeah, so let's say the wood comes all the way out to this flush surface and then the foam comes farther. I think that's reasonable. Where if the foam goes against a rock, it'll just get scraped to hell, but your boat's not going to be substantially narrower or anything like that. But then have that flare out to a square nub, and then that square to be right there. And so that's where that square stair step would enter the water and be your sponson. Hell yeah. So, yep. Anyway, that was just a long way to say if I had this wooden platform, I could attach foam to it and then start foaming out the side of the boat and see where you want that foam. I think the first place is just up against neutral. That's where I'm high siding. That's where I don't want the boat to flip. I want to heavily edge and high side the rail of my boat to release the other side. So I do want this basketball or this rocker side to side, but then I want to engage a sponson when I do that. So it's almost like I want a sharp point here that actually edges the boat, drills in, and then provides a point of stability. But we'll see if it's a sharp point or just that square, just some sort of square material that and if it's foam, if I just do it with foam, it should be light enough where it doesn't inhibit the boat's normal. Because once I've been attaching all these inflated tubes, I swear, like, um, I don't know, it's hard for me to adjust where they hit the water. And once they do, it's not the best feeling. Last night's video, we were able to get we were able to get where it was like actually not bad, and it kind of helped the boat. Where it's like another edge where now instead of just this tube and the I-beam, you're actually releasing on this tube and the sponson. And so that was kind of interesting. All right, hell yeah. So I think I'm going to have a lot of luck with that cockpit, that wooden cockpit that I can foam out, especially seating. People want to know like what I want like with the hip pads and then I can foam out a side of the boat. And you might as well again just foam out one side because it's going to be the same on the other side. But if you just do one, then you can compare it when you're out there and all that stuff. Um, all right, so that was brutal, but I think I don't know. I mean, for just saying, keep repeating myself, I think we did pretty good. I'm gonna get some water, think if I think something else. Yeah, so I'll just double down. So scooching back and turning and doing a stern squirt. So if an R1 boat can actually engage a low volume, you definitely still want a double point. You want it fairly wide, stubby. You want it stubby, as wide as, not as wide as the entire boat, but I mean, because you kind of want it to pirouette. So you want it, you know, for whatever width you're getting, you want 2 points of contact on that width and not a rounded surface. So yeah, so it's kind of like, yeah, and I bet you this would be just fine if you took these tubes and then just really really brought them down to points, um, even on the see the tops of drag. I don't know. Yeah, that's kind of interesting. It's hard with all this because I think I even sit back right here, So if I'm sitting back right here and this is still the contact with the water, you need this 12 inches of surface. So then if anything stern squirting, I mean, but you could have fins, like even down to a plastic fin that enters the water, and even material that's just actually dense, that's non-floating, like, hard plastic. I don't know, even just up to five to experiment with 5 to 10 pounds of plastic that when you drop that into the stern, you can actually feel it drop in, and then you could actually do a stern squirt or something like that. Um, but hell yeah, just in general, drop back 6 inches, the front should pop up. Um, and then if this was, yeah, for surfing, I thought what you'd want is this to have a stair step. Once you drop back, then you're on two cat tubes that are fairly wide in the back, because then you get a lot of surf stability with that. But actually thinking about it, you still want a heavy taper in the back, because this angle right here, especially for surfing, if you're going to surf off the back, can allow you to edge and carve. Like this rounded corner allows you to carve maybe. And so yeah, so that's what you still want that. But if you had a cat tube that's tapered this way, it can also be tapered that way as it goes to a point. And oh yeah, so here is where also, and even if this whole boat tapers towards the back, so I can cut stuff out of here, and the reason why is because I have a wooden cockpit now. That's huge. The fact that you would have like a wooden platform or a flat platform that spans the entire width of the boat, goes back as far as you want. You can have a separation now. The boat can be low volume. I mean, literally, the boat could end right here and then be low volume all the way to there, be made out of whatever material, and then have a wooden platform come back, and you could have a pocket in there that has separation. And so then if you do a stern squirt, you're putting a low volume. And that is huge. So having a platform can allow for low volume portions of the boat. And so what that means is that only the portions of the boat that are in contact with the water need to be there. And then it's just a question of like, well, do you need, yes, you for sure you need a side tube, but do you want the side tube to be a little bit more cutting? And well, yeah, even the side tube. If I'm gonna broach a wave, does this side tube, having the stair step there, that helps. But does that need to be now? There does. Oh yeah, and it's totally fast. I totally forgot about that. So if I have a foam square right here, that's all, and then it's just like 3 inches, 3 to 4 inches. Let's say it goes right there. So the foam starts right here and goes to right there. I don't need any material right here. So if I have a wooden platform that comes out to the beam of the boat, this material can just now go away. Because it's actually not doing crap, because like I said, your last pivot point when it comes to rafting is it. Like after you pass that, the torques on the boat are gonna flip the boat over. um I think it's not feasible. Yeah, I don't know. There is the one design that I want to try is where you actually have this swept all the way out to a high. I don't think that's reasonable though. Because the second it's swept out really high, and then you lean onto just like a dory. A dory's got swept out gunnels. But if you put all your weight on that and that goes flat, the boat's just at such a high edge angle anyway. Like what I want is to release the other end and then plus a foot. I want to be plus or minus a foot after releasing that other end. And I think I can do that just with a sponson right there. The second that overtops, you're flipping anyway. Who cares? So it's just a matter of like getting that extra, being able to edge, high side, and stab and get that extra stability. That's what I'm looking for. And so, yeah, I think once the boat starts to roll, you're screwed anyway. After that, you might as well turn it into a creature craft. That's going to be for other videos where you actually just have, I think you want a hoop of inflated material so it's just always rounded. It's going to be rounded until it hits the flat part of the bottom of the boat. That would make the most sense. And even if you could actually hang on, you might be able to actually flip over with the boat. That would be pretty wild. But yeah, for me, R1 rafting is still all about being not connected, even though I'm trying to find different places for my feet, locked in to the side of the boat while doing these bracing techniques. Oh my God, I felt like my tib was going to twist break. And so I'm still going back to like looser is better. If I'm going to high side, I'm going to throw my body at the corner of my boat. Maybe I can have foam that intercepts my hips at the perfect point. But I'm gonna try to, that's not much contact where you have two hands on your paddle and just having your hips engaged and your feet kind of dangling and stuff like that. Um, but yeah, so yeah, I don't know what the best idea there is. All right, hell yeah. But yeah, so if the stair step provides some coolness, I mean, especially with surfing, I can see that right away. That just makes sense. But then even farther, we're just from this position. If I move back 8 inches and now we can start doing some of those stern squirt moves, like, because the Colorado boaters that are, putting themselves in the back, I mean, they're all the way back here, but I still think you want a boat where you can do that from the center compartment, that all you have to do is just, reach back. And this is so fascinating because now that you would get rid of your thwarts, they're not just straight across. So in the middle of the boat, you can have more, it can be a horseshoe cutout where you can get your feet back farther. So you might be able to get your butt back, feet back all the way up to here. And if the boat's shorter now, so now from the center compartment, you'll just be able to like lean back and then get into those stern squirt moves. I mean, that just makes sense because I mean, they're fun and I just see that if you have to get into this back seat to do those moves, oh man, because they're just there at the ready, and that's what I saw, especially with and again, I don't know if I'm, kind of switching gears, but no, I'll say names, yeah, and especially if it's positive. I'm trying to figure out, especially since, people have their own rafts. I'm trying to make my own, designs. Any company could take these designs. That's what I want them to do. Um, just because it's so hard to manufacture anything. Anyway, so Ben Lloyd was the one that's been, just even coming over to the lock saw. It's probably his first-ish times down the lock saw, and he's surfing pipeline from the back of the boat like he's been doing it his entire life. And it's a super stable position to surf, and he's just killing it. And like, hell yeah, that made me jealous. It was just like, holy Toledo. Um, but yeah, I think you want that from the center though. Why not have a cockpit where you can lean back and get into those back positions with feet still in the center? And then that also, you don't need this 10-foot boat for play stuff. And so the boat can get less. All right, now we said some good stuff. So this video is pretty good. But that's about it. You know what I mean? And so, well, yeah. And if I put, because I did this in writing, if I put a full plywood cockpit, then I can strap it to the boat and it's in one location. And then if the floor's got a plywood floor as well, then I can install foam under that to really shape this out. Because one of the designs that I wanted to work on was putting a strip down the center I-beams to where this is now a diamond. And so your center I-beam is always engaged like, oh, and I think it would provide another benefit is because like right now my boat is kind of too basketball like. It just rolls from one side to another. And if it had a sharp rail down the center, one of these I-beams being raised up, then that kind of prevents a little bit of that, when I jump from one side to the other, the boat moves underneath me. It might move underneath me less. That sounds worse, but I don't think so because it also is a point of contact when you are edging. So if you're just in a normal position, you can guarantee that you're on this center and this outer tube, and then maybe a secondary ridge right here where you get kind of a ridge-like structure. Because right now, if I'm on this outer tube, who knows? Maybe I'm just on this tube and this far I-beam rail, and it's an unstable position. Especially right now, since I have this modification. I'm already on the tipping point of my boat. And then so having that center rail raised up could be a cool thing. And then I am thinking that if you could remove one of the rails in the I-beam, if it's two separate, pieces of floor, and then have them connected with mesh, so you have another rib that's just like this. Maybe that's good for water, shedding. But also you could have that rib be mesh, and then it would be way faster draining. It could replace all these drain holes. Um, but yeah, what the hell? If we're even thinking about that, there's no reason that these drain holes couldn't be like a mesh surface because they're not shearing water a whole lot, but just to have more drainage, faster drainage. Like, yeah, so I'm definitely thinking about different ways to do that. All right, so now I think I'm officially done. I really can't think of too much more. So, hell yeah. All right, thanks for joining me on this one. Booyah.